Good afternoon, welcome back to Pig Monkey HQ. Today's video is going to centre around the fitting of my newly acquired Momo Mod-07. This is a steering wheel with 70mm of dish that I'm fitting because I need to get some extra reach. Well, the steering wheel closer to me because of issues I have with reach. Now, it's going to be slightly topsy-turvy, this one, because I did film footage yesterday, so some of the footage that you're going to see shortly that's going to be edited in will actually be from yesterday. I nearly deafened myself discovering the hard way that I've got to do a little trick with it. Well, not a little trick, it's something you have to do with the key position to stop the alarm going off when you disconnect the negative terminal. Right, so start for 10, get the battery out. Right, so next step, I believe, is to remove the airbag module, and what I've read should be T30, and there are two recesses at the back of the steering wheel. Ah, yes, I'm on it. T30. A very tight T30. So I may have to put a set of mole grips on this to crack that open. Well, would help if I wasn't trying to tighten it up. So I'm doing it back to front from the back. That's why it was, well, it was tight, but I actually nipped it up a bit first, which in reality actually can be the best way to crack something sometimes if it's not coming loose, is to tighten it a little bit first and then go for the untighten. Anyway, I'm sticking to that story. Right, so get it the right way now. That will be tightened, that'll be untightened. That was easy. Yeah, so I'm going to try this Momo. I really like the look of the Momo steering wheel, but obviously I really like the 3-spoke as well. I may in the future get one of these spacers and try it with the standard wheel. The one thing I'd like to do with the standard wheel is get it retrimmed. I like it in leather, but I'd like the suede, Alcantara, whatever, instead. That would be a nice addition. I don't know quite whether they do everything or whether they just cut it here and do the outer part. But for now, we're going to go with the Momo. Now I think this just, I gently grip it, it just pops off. It says, yes, gently waggle. So that's the bit you don't want to go off, the airbag module. That's the whole point of disconnecting the battery, and I presumably so I don't get an airbag warning light as well. That I'm sure would happen. So I've got a big bolt in the middle to come off. See how easy this cracks. So normally you just hold this with your knees. There we go. There we go. So keep that one safe. Then we have a washer. So that just pulls off. That one pulls off. Right, so that's straightforward enough. Maybe I've got to undo those. There's two crossheads with the plastic shroud, and maybe that has to come out. There is an arrow, don't know whether you can see that on the video here, pointing to the top, and it's in that position. But everything else obviously moves within the middle of that, and then these wires will just turn with the steering wheel. Okay, so back to day 2 again. Now, one of the things that you have to do is turn your ignition key to the on position, position 1, where all the lights come on the dash. If you do that and disconnect the battery, your alarm will not go off. It scared the crap out of me, as you've probably just seen a few seconds ago when it did that. But once you've done that, and then you can disconnect the airbag. So, as probably you will have just seen, it's a few things you need to do. It's a 24mm bolt to remove the actual steering wheel off the column, and at the back of the steering wheel there are 2 T30 Torx which allow you to remove the airbag, and then the airbag fitting, which is this here, just pulls out. Probably just showed you that though, so like I say, apologies if I'm now repeating things. So that was my spacer. Now this here is called the clock spring, and it's pretty much the same whether it's on a 964, 993 or a 996, and I presume also a 997, but I don't know, I'm guessing at that. They're very, very similar. I know that this is basically the same part as on a 993 from what I can find out. One of the things that I've discovered though, there doesn't seem to be, or not that I found, a proper in-depth breakdown of how to fit one of these steering wheels and what you do regards the horn, and more importantly the airbag. I did find there is a link that I was given by the company that I got the wheel through, which is to a forum thread regards the fitting of a Momo steering wheel. It's not a Mod-07, but it doesn't really matter, and it goes through with pictures and a breakdown. But I really struggled to understand what I was looking at with the pictures, and after spending lots of time yesterday and this morning, I seem to now fully understand what's going on. So when this item is removed, this is how it goes on, like so. At the back, going through the centre, we've got these plugs here, and these plugs, which are the males, plug into the females, which are here. Now I've also removed all the cowl, and this item goes on, and you've got 4 screws. These little cutouts at the side is where the screws are to hold the clock spring on. And then you've got the main cowling, which is this, which has 2 small Phillips screws at the side. Once you remove those, it all comes apart, and then these sections here are just rubber, which go over the wash wipers, indicators, and the little onboard computer control stalk. So all that lot comes off quite easy. Most people who do a little bit of DIY or on the tools will be able to do that. Underneath this module here, there is a 8mm, which is this, an 8mm nut that you undo, and basically this part here is where it clamps onto the steering column here. So it clamps onto that. That will then enable you, once you get a little bit of waggle room, to disconnect and move everything off here. Cables slot into this little housing that sits over the top. It's like a cradle, and they push in there. It's just so nothing chases or rubs over time on the actual steering column as you're using the car. Now on the right hand side, move the camera around, I'm using my little Osmo pocket, which has been a really good little thing to buy, to be honest, because it's so easy to get into nooks and crannies. So this here, all these pins you can see, that's what this module here plugs into. Now, the various bits of kit that you get with the wheel, you get the boss, which is a separate item, which can connect to any of the Momo wheels and also OMPs and a variety of other ones. But this is a Momo Boss. You can see it's got like the brass plate on the back which makes the contact. This is to do with the contact for the horn. You also got, which you can probably just see in here, this silver one here is a sandwich piece. It sandwiches in between the Boss and the actual wheel. And this is for earthing for the horn. Now this is one of the things yesterday I was a bit confused over. There are 3 different ways of doing this, it would appear. You've basically just got to be able to get it earthed properly. So within the Boss kit here, there is one cable here, and that one, from what I can see, and I will confirm this when I do it later because I can't test it yet because the battery is still disconnected, that I believe that one connects onto the horn button here. This sprung brass, well, I say it's brass coloured, but it's sprung steel, that when you push this in, earthes on this silver piece that sandwiches in between. And you've probably just seen it previously actually in the footage from yesterday. This is why I was saying apologies for it being a bit disjointed, because I've not watched all that footage back yet. Now there is a little tab there which is for basically a second earth if needed, and there are different really ways that you can do that. You can connect a let's have a look. So you can connect onto that by a second earth that maybe goes. So for instance, these ones that have unplugged here, that there is an earth, and I think it's the brown and white. You can probably just see it there. There's very little play on these. You can't pull them out more than about an inch, so they're a bit awkward to splice onto. So that's an earth that we can use. Now one of the things that you have to do, this plug here, you have a piece that you get with the kit which contacts with the back of the steering wheel. This is for the horn, and this is sprung steel, and it has a pin that goes through this centre section and it plugs in there. But the problem you've got is that any car that's got an airbag, all this kit and setup is pretty much the same from what I can gather on the 993 and a 964. And certainly on the 964, I think I'm right in saying that airbag probably wasn't available or may have been an option. And the same thing with the 993. I don't know whether the early ones airbag was an option. I don't know enough about the air-cooled cars. But the upshot is, if your car didn't have an airbag, then this hole here corresponds with this pinhole, and this pinhole is not populated, and it's pin number 71, and it's not populated on cars that have an airbag fitted. So what you need to do is rig up some way of putting a pin being able to push into this, and then a wire, which you can see this orange one, that will run to earth. Now what I did, I've just got one of the bullet fittings that you can get, and they come in like red, blue and yellow for different sizes, the red being the smallest ones. I stripped the outer casing off, I got a pair of Stilsons and I crushed it in on itself so it overlapped, and basically made it so it would fit in the hole. And then I pressed it in with a pair of Stilsons again, and at the other side it's connected to this piece of wire. When I now put this plug back on and I push this piece in through here, it will then push into pin 71. So that gives us the earth, and I believe from what I've read and looking at all the stuff and the variety of different replies and threads, that this has to go to an earth. This is quite straightforward and simple. I'm not going to really damage anything. It'll either not work or it'll work. I believe that once that is earthed, and this is earthed, which means it connects to the back of the steering wheel, that all I will need to do then is connect this wire here that's coming out the centre of the Boss to the actual centre of the horn, and the outer part which connects to this steel section here, which is then connected to the Boss kit, and the Boss kit is connected to the steering column, earth is all the other stuff. I'm pretty sure that's correct, but we will see when I come to put it all together. The next thing, and really more important, revolves around the airbag. And what have I done with it? There you go. One of the little things you'll see on the thread, and I will post actually a link to the forum thread that talks about this. The chap on there makes his own resistor. This little thing came with it, and this in effect is a fuse with a little resistor that's underneath the heat shrink here. You can probably see it's just slightly bulged. That's a tiny little resistor. I'm not an electrician or that much electrician minded, or certainly auto electrician minded, but from what I can gather, what this basically does, it kids the car into thinking that it has an airbag, and therefore you don't get the airbag light. This needs to connect in to this orange plug, because this orange plug, if we go back to the clock spring, which has got green and brown, is it, and then a green and blue, that is the plug that then connects through to the airbag plug, this yellow one. You think they're doing the same colour, wouldn't you, really? If it's yellow at this end, why is this orange at this end? I mean, no problem with the red, because red goes to red, and orange goes to orange, but then orange goes to yellow. But go figure. But the reason that is because I can see there, they're the same colour wires. So, again, from all the reading and researching and bit of information I was given from the dealer, this somehow has to get wired in to this orange plug here. Now, what some people have done, they have either cannibalised the clock spring to get these plugs off the end, which I do not want to do because there's no going back. I mean, I suppose I could cut them off and re-splice them again if I put it back together again. In fact, that is an option, I suppose. If I carefully cut them off and do them in the middle, I could piece them back together again. So that is an option. Or they've bought a broken clock spring that they've managed to find, say, on eBay or wherever, and they've cannibalised that. Or the other option is that I find some way of just plugging directly into there. Right, so you can see it, the little dongle thing there, the capacitor. So I rigged something up. I actually ended up using some flat pins that I had already stripped out of something else, and I squashed them in the vise, and I just sanded them, any rough edges off, and made them into round pins, and then I put them on little push connectors. So yeah, it worked, and they're a good fit. So now I'm just popping everything back together. Well, I say everything back together. I'm not going to fit the outer shroud on yet because I want to just check that everything works. The one thing I'm questioning is the horn, to be honest, but hopefully I won't get an airbag light come on now, because he didn't say there was any like particular way that capacitor went on, as in, you know, which wire went to what. I think it can work either way around. I hope so, because if it is a specific way, there should be instructions, and there weren't. So we will see. So this now pushes in. This is now into pin 71, which is now earthed to the connector that the actual clock spring was on. So that should be right. And then now when this goes back on, this brass will contact with that, and we will see. So I'm just going to screw everything back together, tighten it up just tight enough just so I can at least make sure that it's earthed properly, and we'll test it, and I'll pop the battery back on. Right, so back together. The final step, the piece that went in here that connected to pin 71, this whole part, once loose, can be moved backwards and forwards before it clamps onto the actual steering column. So you've got to pull it up until it makes contact with the actual brass ring that's on the boss. Once that's in position, you can then nip it up. So there you go, horn works, it's touching, Bob's your uncle, and no airbag light from what I can see. So it looks like everything I've done has worked, which is a surprise. So I'm going to get this tightened up, put the cowling back on, and then I'll just do a recap. Right, success. All back together. I don't have a light on. Horn works. So no airbag warning lights. I surprised myself. So all I need to do now is put the cowling back on. So yeah, important things to note when you're putting this back together. This is what I found anyway, coming from an amateur like myself. The easy way will be to butcher the clock ring to get the plugs, but it is possible to do it without doing that. As I say, I fashion them out of various bits of pins. As long as it's insulated, you've got some kind of insulation around it, whether that's electrical tape or whatever, just something to protect it, and they fit in there firmly, it's going to work. The horn, what I did is, like I said, pin 71, connected that to the earth that the clock spring came out of, connected the earth wire onto the horn here, and that works. And then the final thing is adjusting the box here that's got the indicators in, etc. With it still loose, slide it up so it contacts the piece that connects into pin 71. That gives you the earth. Connect the other wire onto the horn button, and Bob's your uncle. It works. Right, final lessons learned. So make sure you put this cowling back together before you put the wheel on. I suppose you can put it on to test, but I tightened up properly. I wasn't sure whether it had to be really tightened on to make sure you got a sound earth, but it makes it very, very hard to get this all back together. So I'd put this face piece on, but what I didn't realise is that you can probably see here, these little bits go into there, and the whole thing goes together. And also slotting these rubbers in at the side is a lot easier with the wheel off, especially on this side where there's two slots. So I ended up wrestling with it, and I nearly won. And then one of the screws dropped into here and then went down and was somewhere at the back, and then I couldn't get it out. I had to take it all off, and then it finally dropped into the bottom of the dash, so I ended up banging the underside of the dash until it bounced out. So that wasted about half an hour, so don't make the same mistake that I did. Get this all back together once all this is tested, and then put the steering wheel back on again. Other than that, I think we're done. Reassembly once again. So I'm finished. This is how it looks. Really pleased with how it looks, and it feels fantastic. So the one thing I did have to do is I took my big 1/2 inch ratchet with the 24mm with me and drove it down the road, because I thought I got it straight. It looked straight, but then you drive it on the road and the wheels straighten up, and it was probably 10 degrees or so out. So it will be necessary to adjust it to get it top dead centre, as it were, for the yellow on the top once you're in the perfect forward position. So just let it drive down, took my hands off the wheels, going at slow speed down a flat piece of road, and then braked, came to a halt, undid it, put it back on straight, tightened it up, tried again, and it was bob on. So yeah, well, tell me what you think. Visually I like it. I think it's a nice, I don't know what it is about it, to be quite honest. I just find it, I think it's because it's a bit more motorsport looking, to be honest. But the main thing is it achieves what I wanted it to do. Forget what it looks like. What I wanted was to get the steering wheel closer to me without moving my seat forward, because when I was changing gear and turning, I was holding the wheel. If I was wanting to dip the clutch, I was hitting my hand on the top of my thigh when my hand was in this kind of position. So it's done what I wanted it to do. it feels nicer. I do prefer a wheel to be a little closer anyway. I think that's probably because of going on the track in my Integra. When you're doing any track work, you tend to find that the seat is better in a more upright position and the steering wheel a little bit closer rather than when you're driving on the road. So this is kind of an in-between. It's not super close, but I can have my legs stretched out a bit more. And then the added bonus is it just looks great. So, but I'd really be interested to hear what you think, and if my explanation makes any sense, and hopefully if you're thinking of doing this mod, it will make your life a lot easier, because I spent a lot of time trying to find out the correct and the easiest way to do it. So if this helps just one of you, then job done.